Hi, it's Adam from Reality Manifestation. Within this video, you're going to learn how to control your mind and know in effective ways how to permanently reprogram your subconscious mind. With that said, let's get straight into it. So you may already be familiar with the subconscious mind and beliefs. And if you're not too familiar with these concepts or how they work or how to change your beliefs, I'm going to leave some links in the description box down below. But within this video, a much less often discussed but very important topic is neuroassociations and how our associations to things causes how we respond to that situation, from whether we feel confident, anxious, depressed, happy, joyful. It even has physiological and biological effects as well, which can be anything from particular events, people, clothing, exercise, food, even certain colours, certain weather conditions, literally anything we have an association to. The purpose for this, you may have heard me say in a previous video, is that our brain's two prime motives is to either help us avoid pain or to gain pleasure. And with an association, our minds are always looking to determine what something means, whether it will lead to pain or lead to pleasure. So by having an association to something, it helps us automatically, after we've experienced and created that association, to know whether we should avoid it or go towards it. So it's to save us wasting time having to relearn or to recalculate what would be the best plan of action based on what the given event stimuli that we have the association to. So this is important for our survival. So for example, if we have a life-threatening experience with a particular wild animal, this created the neuroassociation within us that this animal can lead to death and to be cautious around this particular animal. So as you can already tell, this is a very important function within our survival. But then the challenge comes in is when we create false neuroassociations that we link up and associate a particular event or experience and stimuli to mean something that's not actually true, and it has a negative, disempowering impact on our entire lives, or at least an aspect of our lives. So to give you an example, someone may have an association of food equals love. So by eating lots of food, they could associate that's their way of feeling loved, which can cause them to overeat. Or someone could associate being in a relationships could equal pain or even potentially death, and they'll subconsciously avoid relationships, being completely frightened to death of them, not realizing they may have had a false neuroassociation to what a relationship means. This will make more sense when I go through how a neuroassociation is formed within the first place. So as I've mentioned previously, our minds are always scanning all around us to determine what something means, so whether it will lead to pain or lead to pleasure. And for those of you who have watched some of my previous videos on the subconscious mind, will realise that the subconscious mind is spoken to and relates to things through emotions and not through logic and reasoning. So when a strong emotional event happens, our subconscious mind, since it's constantly scanning to determine what something means, will link this event or experience to link up and mean what's related to the emotional state that we're in within that particular moment. And quite often it can create emotional neuroassociations that are irrational. And what's similar to this is that it creates something that's called an anchor. So an anchor is basically another way that's very similar to a neuroassociation. So to give you an example that you've likely experienced yourself is, can you think of a particular song that whenever you hear it, it reminds you of a very powerful, emotionally fueled experience, whether it was a loving experience, something that was very painful, or a lot of anger is associated every time you hear this song, or something that was just very happy or reminds you of a funny experience. And every time you hear this song, it brings you back to that experience and you feel like you're reliving it again. Now, to give you an extreme example of how a neuroassociation can be formed, if you was to imagine a young child, we'll go with a boy within this example, has never been given an apple before for whatever reason, and is going to be a green apple, and this young boy is given a green apple, and for the first time as he's about to eat it, his parents start having a very heated argument, maybe even violent, and he starts to become terrified of the argument happening between his parents, because our minds are always scanning what something means, and it starts to find, oh, the green apple, this is something new. At the same time, we're feeling terrified. This green apple happens when I'm feeling terrified. So this doesn't necessarily automatically create a neuroassociation, because everyone's minds and nervous systems are different and unique, and what could take one person to have a particular experience to create a neuroassociation, for someone else it may require 10 or even 20 more intense experiences to create the same kind of neuroassociation. So going back to the example of the young boy, now imagine after this experience, a week or so later, that he's at school and he's just about to try an green apple again for the second time. And just as he's about to bite into it, a group of school bullies come up and start threatening him. And his mind again will start searching for what's unique in this situation or experience. The green apple's there again as I'm feeling terrified. And the mind will start to link up and associate. The green apple's always there when I'm terrified, so the green apple is the cause of this experience, so the green apple will lead to pain. And this is quite often how phobias and irrational fears are created in the first place, because there's been a neuroassociation, most often caused subconsciously, that our minds have linked up to a particular stimuli to equal what the emotional intensive experience was at the same time. The same is true also for empowering associations. For example, people who really enjoy exercise, and they have an association that they'll feel healthier or sexier or anything that leads to pleasure, and it causes them to want to take that action more often. And the opposite is also true, is if someone has a negative association to exercise, they'll link it to pain and they'll want to avoid it. So now there's a variety of ways in which you can create new associations, but just before I go through a particular method of changing your associations, the most important thing you want to learn first is, whenever you're wanting to create a new association, you want to break the pattern of the old disempowering association you had beforehand. To give you an analogy, imagine that you have a CD player, and that each CD you have is a particular association or belief that you're wanting to have. And it's like the equivalent of having a CD already within the CD player, and you're trying to place another CD on top of it and wondering why it's not playing properly. So it's vitally important to break the previous pattern first. To avoid this being an extremely long video, I'm going to leave a link in the description box down below on how to break your patterns. So once you've gotten into the emotional pattern, the state of when you realize the association has been triggered, which is the ideal time to break your pattern, and you've broken the pattern of that disempowering association, this is now the ideal time to condition and create a new, more empowering association. So one way you can do this effectively by yourself is through affirmations, but I'm going to go through how to use affirmations in a way that will bring you far greater results than what most people will go through or try and attempt when it comes to affirmations. An affirmation is simply just a phrase or a statement of something you want to feel, believe, or experience. You'll know when you're doing affirmations effectively because you'll feel emotionally that the phrase that you're saying, that you're feeling it emotionally, or that you're experiencing it, or that you're feeling certain that the statement is true or that it isn't, whatever the affirmation is for. And where most people go wrong is they focus solely more on the actual phrase or statement itself, and not on the emotional response that they're creating. Because in order to communicate the affirmation with the subconscious mind, you need to create that emotional experience, which will also create the neuroassociation as well. Ideally, whilst doing this, you want to be in proximity of the trigger that creates the reaction to the association within the first place, such as whether it's food or a partner, something intimate, but obviously this isn't always possible, or it's not always appropriate to do certain techniques and methods. So whilst you're doing your affirmations, you want to create the sensation that you're there with the trigger. By trigger, I mean basically what the association is related to. So say if it was the green apple for the young boy, ideally he would do this with a green apple in front of him, but if not, you'd want to create the sensations through the affirmations that the green apple is in front of you, if that was what you was wanting to change your association to, for example. Now, another key area where the majority of people go wrong when it comes to affirmations is that they're focusing solely on just using their conscious mind and trying to use logic to reprogram the subconscious mind. And this at times can be highly ineffective. I'm going to leave a link down below to another video where I describe how the conscious mind can filter and also block what you're trying to reprogram and put into the subconscious mind. Now, it's key to remember as you're doing these affirmations that you're wanting to create the experience of the association you're wanting to create. And this is the same for creating new beliefs as well. And to do this, you don't only want to say the statement, but you want to get your whole physiology involved. So you want to be moving, that associates to how you want to feel. You want to be using the tone of voice. So you're feeling confident? Are you feeling assertive? Are you feeling happy, joyful? And you also want to represent the new association within your mind of how you're wanting to feel and experience with that new association. So most people just focus solely on the phrase and the words they're saying, but quite often more powerfully is how you're representing it within your mind. So for example, I've done different forms of affirmations myself over many years, but I actually create the sensation much more powerfully through having a vivid image, sometimes of myself in a third person, and I feel it much more powerfully. So how everyone's mind represents things is quite unique. If you want to look into this further, I'd recommend looking into what's called submodalities, which is taught in NLP, which I may cover in more detail within a future video. But experiment as you're saying the affirmation with how you're representing it within your mind. So, do you create the sensation easier when you vividly imagine it? When you picture it in black and white? Or if you focus more on the sounds? Or what you can touch and feel? So have a play with this as you're saying the affirmation, and you'll start to become more aware of what within your mind, how you represent it, what communicates to your subconscious more, and how you represent that experience within your mind. And again, combining this with moving your physiology in relation to the sensations that you're wanting to create, the tone of voice and the words that you're using, combine with this with how you're representing it within your mind, you'll find you're much more powerfully and effectively create the sensations and communicate this on a subconscious level. Now, if you were to contrast this with an affirmation such as, I am so blessed. I am so blessed. Now, if you said this repetitively enough, your mind will start to accept it purely because of the repetition, and the subconscious mind responds to and likes repetition. However, it can take an awfully long time, and if you have a disempowering emotional state due to the lack of enthusiasm behind the affirmation, or more importantly how you're representing it within your mind, this could actually create an association of, well, I say I feel so blessed, but I actually feel very down and ungrateful. If you find it difficult to come up with your own affirmations, I'll leave you a few examples in the description box below. And remember, as you're doing these affirmations, to change an association, you always want it in relation to what the association is for. So every time you think of something that relates to the association, it causes you to automatically feel the sensations that you're feeling through the affirmations. So now, to quickly summarize, our minds are always searching for what will lead to pain or lead to pleasure, and it's always looking to find what something means, so whether it will lead to pain or pleasure. And whenever we have an emotionally strong, fueled experience, our mind's always searching for what's unique in this situation. And then it can link up on a neurological level that this will equal this experience, this emotion I'm feeling at the time. In order to change a disempowering association, you first want to break the pattern. And then one way in which you can create new, more empowering associations is through affirmations. And make sure as you're doing these affirmations, you're creating the sensation that is related to the experience of what you're wanting to create the association for. So for example, again, if it was with a green apple, that you'd create an association of that you feel confident or happy, or whatever you're wanting to feel and experience when you're around the green apple. I hope you found this video useful. If you could like the video, and if you haven't already, if you could subscribe, as this will let us know what kind of videos you're wanting us to make more of. Also, comment down below any disempowering associations that you're going to work on changing, or anything that you've particularly found useful from this video. And also share this with anyone who you think would benefit from learning about associations or how to use affirmations in a different way. I hope you found this video useful, and I shall see you soon.